So we have to start with international economics. That means the second part of international economics, which is related to balance of payment and foreign exchange. So topics related to balance of payment and foreign exchange. So in this second section of international economics, just I will give a overall view. As you know, the topic of international economics is divided into two parts. One part relate to all theories of trade, and in that section we discuss the old theories as well as the new theories. So including old theories include basically the Ricardian theory, HO model, specific factor model, standard trade model, and then new trade theories, and we also discuss the instruments of trade policies. So we have done the first part of which is theories of trade, including that product cycle hypothesis, product cycle model. So there are this first section was basically micro in approach, and they were using the micro tools. So you will find a few questions related to theories of trade in paper, and the second section which we are going to start is balance of payment and foreign exchange market, and the concept related to that, balance of payment and foreign exchange market. So in this part, the approach of this section is mainly macro. So it is explaining economy as a whole. This approach theories was basically using the micro tools. Now this will be using the macro tools. When I say macro tools, it means we will be using ISLM model. So by using that ISLM model, we will be explaining, let us say, Mundell-Fleming model. So Mundell-Fleming model will be using the ISLM tool. There are other aspects as well. So the second section is basically mainly dealing with balance of payment and the issues related to the foreign exchange market, fixed exchange rate, flexible exchange rate. Then this topic will also include custom union, trade creating custom union, trade diverting custom union, and you will find many questions related to that. And at the end, it will also explain trade as a engine of development. So will be certain issue topics. But before starting that, just see the question. This topic wise question from international economics section. So in 2020, last year, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 questions were there from international economics section, and in that international economics section, out of 5, if you start with the fifth question, it says explain how trade blocs are important in the process of economic globalization. Illustrate your answer with suitable example. So if you know the concept related to the trade bloc or custom union, then you can answer this question number 5, and we will be discussing that in this section. Then one question was in an economy, the government is trying to boost the local economy by a massive advertisement, buy local, local is best. Assuming that public tend to be persuaded by the campaign, what effect might this have on the economy multiplier? So how the multiplier will be affected? So you can say this question is basically applied in nature. So if you promote local, that means increase in income, major part of increase in income will be used to buy domestic goods. So there will be more increase in domestic income. If we use increase in income and we use more part of increase in income to buy foreign goods, then it will be increasing income of foreign countries more and income of domestic economy less. So now this question also we can answer by using this macro approach. So in the first class itself, you will get some idea that why we are discussing about that multiplier. In an open economy, what is the value of multiplier? In a closed economy, what is the value of multiplier? How that value of multiplier will change by this campaign. So I think based on this class itself, you will be able to answer this part. Other question was discuss the issue of compatibility between international trade and economic sustainability. Economic international trade and environmental sustainability. Then second was, in the context of international trade theory, discuss in detail the various stages of international product life cycle. So you can say this was in a question from the first section, theories of trade, and specifically it was asking product life cycle. And the first question was also, we can say, applied. That means if you know the concept and you are able to apply, then you can answer it. Clear? So generally 5 to 6 question comes from international side, and out of that 5 to 6, 2 to 3 question will be from this theory section, and 2 to 3 will find from the balance of payment and foreign exchange market. So can 2020 there was 5 question, in 2019 1 2 3 4, and again in 2019 when you say that, read this question: trade can be growth promoting or growth inhibiting, argue in terms of established theories. So we have read all the theories. Based upon those theories we have to answer, out of those theories which trade theory is growth promoting and which is growth inhibiting, restricting. So it is not asking for any particular specific trade theory. If you know all the theories, and then you have to answer. Then ninth, you can read, what are the features based on which new trade theories are based that are distinctly different from the old theories. So again, if you know all old theories, you know what is common among all old theories, what is common in the new trade theories, how they are different, then you can answer this part. Clear? So 4 question in this on this page, and 2 more on this page. So again 6 question. So usually 5 to 6 question every year you will be getting from the international section, international economy section. Clear? So you can say the weightage is approximately, I will say, of 90 to 100 marks. Some question will be in the compulsory, some will be of 15 marks, some will be of 20 marks. So now in this section we have to explain balance of payment and foreign exchange market. The first class in this section I will be discussing the basic concept. That means from question point of view, it is not that directly you will get a question, what do you mean by balance of payment and so on, but you must know the concept. So first class I will be taking for this basic concept. In that basic concept we will be discussing balance of payment and its component, what is fixed exchange rate, what is flexible exchange rate, how IS curve get modified in an open economy, because so far we have discussed about the closed economy. Now we are discussing about the open economy. So how that IS curve get modified, and how the slope of IS curve will change in the open economy. So in this first section, first class, all basic concept. From second class onwards, you can say it will be more and more question oriented, like Mundell-Fleming model. After that, balance of payment and adjustment policies, expenditure reducing policy, expenditure switching policy, absorption policy, elasticity approach, J curve effect. So all those topic will be basically more relevant from question point of view. Clear? So it will be taking a few classes to cover this second section. Clear? So I will be starting with the basic concept first. Balance of payment, BOP. So first thing is that balance of payment is basically a systematic record, and what it records? It records all economic transaction between a resident of one country and a resident of rest of world. I repeat, balance of payment is basically a systematic record of all economic transactions between a resident of one country and residents of rest of world during an accounting period. So if you are preparing balance of payment for India, it will be recording all economic transactions between residents of India and residents of rest of world during an accounting period. Now question is, what are those economic transactions? So all economic transactions, some economic transaction will be creating receipts and some economic transaction will be creating payments. That means, for example, if you are importing goods, you have to make payment. If you are exporting goods, you will be receiving payment. So there will be a receipt side and payment side. So just keep in mind, if we are explaining balance of payment for India, then resident of Indian economy are trading with or making transaction with rest of world, rest of world. So club all other countries as rest of world. Now what are the economic transactions? For example, from India, if we export goods, so when you export goods, it will be recorded in the receipt side. So it is export of goods. When we import goods, it will be recorded in the payment side. So that will be import of goods. Apart from goods, there will be transaction of services. So export of services, similarly import of services. Clear? Other transaction could be like transfer payments. For example, residents, some Indians working abroad and they are sending money back to their home. You can call it remittances. So those are transfer payments received. Similarly, some foreigners working in India and they are sending money back to their home. So that will be transfer payments and this will be transfer earning. So one is basically transfer earning and here you can say it is transfer payment. Clear? Other transaction that will be recorded will be basically investment income. Suppose Indian resident has purchased bond in the US market. On that bond they are earning regular income, or they have purchased equity in the international market. On that equity they are receiving certain income. So that income received or investment income received, I am not saying investment per se total, it is the return on that investment, investment income. So one is investment income received. Similarly, there can be investment income paid to the rest of world. Investment income paid to rest of world. The amount of investment itself will be recorded in the capital account. These four basically constitute the current account. This is your current account of balance of payment. That means balance of payment has two broad account. One account is current account, other account is capital account, and the sum of both account will be your balance of payment. So export of goods, import of goods, export of services, import of services, you can call it trade imbalance. Then transfer earning, investment income. So just remember, four items are included in the current account. The items, the nature of item included in the current account are basically flow in nature. When we study in macro what are stock variable and what are flow variable. Flow variables you can measure over a period of time, but a stock variable you can measure at a particular point of time. Stock you can measure at a particular point of time. Flow you can measure over a period of time. Like for example, income. So income is basically a flow. We earn income per month or per day. So it is basically recurring in nature every month. So items recorded in the current account are recurring in nature. Exports is not only for one particular month, it is how much export from India every year, so per annum. So when you express it in terms of time dimension, then it is a flow in nature. But if I say how much is wealth, how much is investment, so it can be measured at a particular point of time. how much wealth person has at a particular point of time, it can be calculated. So that will be stock in nature. So the transactions recorded in the current account are mainly flow in nature, and transactions recorded in the capital account are mainly flow in nature. So these, that is why when you say there is a CAD, current account deficit, so what does that mean? Current account deficit, current account will be in deficit if the payment side of current account, which include these four, is greater than the receipt side of current account. So current account deficit actually implies that the payment side of current account is greater than the receipt side of the current account. And when we say that the current account is in surplus, so current account could be in surplus when the receipts of the current account are greater as compared to the payment side. Clear? So one broad account is basically the current account, and apart from these four transactions, the other transactions are mainly recorded in the capital account. Like for example, investment. So if a firm is making investment outside India, if Reliance is setting plant and machinery in London, then that will be basically recorded in the capital account. But if Reliance is making investment in London, then it will be recorded in the receipt side or in the payment side. You have to just remember the flow of money, where money is flowing in or money is flowing out. So when Indian firms making investment outside, money is flowing out, so it will be recorded in the payment side. If Coke is making investment in India, money is flowing in. Foreign direct investment, money is flowing in, so that will be recorded in the on the receipt side. So we don't have to deal with those technicality of the balance of payment. We have to just understand that balance of payment is a systematic record, and it records all economic transactions between resident of one country and the residents of rest of world during an accounting period. So the sum of current account plus capital account. So capital account is basically sale of assets, land, equities, bond, they are sale of assets. So sale of assets or purchase of assets are recorded in the capital account, and these four are basically the current account. Clear? So I think the meaning of balance of payment is clear. What happens that balance of payment transactions are basically recorded on an accounting principle, that is double entry bookkeeping system, and according to that balance of payment must always be balanced. It is always balanced. Now if balance of payment is always balanced in accounting sense, what is the interpretation when we say that India is having balance of payment problem, or there was a balance of payment crisis in 1991? So what is that crisis? What is the meaning of disequilibrium? So we are more concerned about the economic interpretation rather than the accounting interpretation. In accounting sense it is always balanced. In accounting sense it is always balanced, but in economic sense they are not balanced. Now what is the main difference between that economic interpretation and the accounting interpretation? So we will be focusing on that economic interpretation. You can also note one more thing, that any transaction which get recorded in that balance of payment will involve foreign exchange. If you are exporting goods, the payment will be in terms of foreign exchange. If you are importing goods, you have to make payment in terms of foreign exchange, whether it is goods or services or transfer earning or investment earning or capital inflow or capital outflow, all involves foreign exchange. And when we talk about foreign exchange, then custodian of foreign exchange is central bank. So central bank will come always in picture. So I will write it RBI in between, means when we export goods we receive payment. So from rest of world dollar will come, and RBI will convert that dollar into rupee, and the exporter will get payment in terms of rupee. Clear? In India we are not keeping dollar, but we are receiving payment in terms of dollar, but that dollar is converted into rupee by the central bank. At what rate it will be converted, that depends upon the exchange rate. Exchange rate can be fixed or it could be flexible, that is determined by the market force. or it could be determined by the central bank itself. So that will be coming later on. When we make payment, that is import of goods. So when you are importing goods, we have to make payment, but payment outside India will be made in terms of foreign exchange. So we make payment to central bank in terms of rupee, and RBI converts it into dollar, and then payment is made outside. So it actually means that all inflow and outflow is through central bank. All inflow and outflow is through central bank. So any transaction which get recorded in balance of payment involve foreign exchange, and that foreign exchange inflow and outflow will always be through central bank. If it is through central bank, then there is a better or easy way to interpret balance of payment deficit. Suppose, for example, on 1st of April 2021, the foreign action reserve with central bank is 300 billion. On 1st of April 2021, the foreign action reserve with RBI is 300 billion. And if we find that on 31st of March 2022, the foreign action reserve with central bank is 280 billion. If on 1st of April it was 300 billion, and on year end, that is 31st of March next year 2022, the reserve is now 280, then what will be the interpretation? Interpretation is that during that period, that is 2021-22, 1st April 2021 to 31st March 2022, there must be more outflow as compared to inflow. More outflow, less inflow, only then the reserve will fall. So if there is more outflow and less inflow, we can say that outflow is basically because of payment, inflow is through receipts. So if there is more outflow, it means there is more payment and less receipts. But if there is more payment, then there is a balance of payment deficit. So if foreign action reserve with central bank is declining, then we can say that there is deficit in the balance of payment. And in the case of surplus, balance of payment, foreign action reserve will be increasing. So if foreign action reserve is declining, it is deficit. If it is increasing, it is surplus. Clear? I think this is the easy way to interpret. So one interpretation is through that foreign exchange stock, if it is rising or declining. So remember that foreign action reserve is basically a stock concept. That is why you get information that on 31st of March 2021, the stock of foreign action reserve is this much. But change in that stock is basically a flow. So change in that stock will be when the payment or receipts has imbalance, and that imbalance is basically balance of payment imbalance. So when balance of payment imbalance or disequilibrium include, it could be deficit or it could be surplus. Clear? So one way of interpreting this, there is another interpretation of balance of payment. Just focus on all aspect of balance of payment, because it will be used frequently over the period. The other interpretation of balance of payment deficit is or surplus is in terms of making difference between autonomous transaction and accommodating transaction. Autonomous transaction and accommodating transaction. Now what is autonomous transaction and what is accommodating transaction? Out of these transactions, there are certain transactions which are autonomous in nature. Autonomous means they are independent from balance of payment consideration, independent from BOP consideration. Like for example, an importer will make transaction irrespective of the balance of payment position. It means it is not that an importer will stop importing because India is facing balance of payment crisis. His decision to import is independent from BOP consideration. Similarly, an exporter decision is also independent from BOP consideration. So export of goods, services, transfer. So there are many transactions which are independent from BOP considerations. So club them all to call as a autonomous transaction. So those autonomous transaction could be on the receipt side, could be on the payment side. So another way is, if autonomous receipts and there is autonomous payments, autonomous receipts and autonomous payments. Now if I say that this autonomous receipt is less and payment is more, for example, so autonomous payments are mainly import of goods, services, transfer, investment. There are many capital account transactions which are also autonomous. Now you must recall that payment must be made in terms of the foreign exchange. So if autonomous payment is more, that means you need more foreign exchange to make payment, and we have less foreign exchange through our receipts. So if we have to make more payment, so suppose you require $1,000 for payment, but the autonomous receipts is only $800. So there is a shortfall of 200. From where we can fill that shortfall, because you have to make payment and you are making payment of 1000 but you are receiving only 800. Now that shortfall can be met. That shortfall can be met by borrowing internationally. Now that borrowing is called accommodating transaction. Why there is need to borrow? There was need to borrow because there is imbalance between autonomous payment and autonomous receipts. If autonomous payments and autonomous receipts were equal, then there was no need to borrow. So that borrowing is called accommodating transaction. But it is not always that you have to borrow always. Central bank has the reserve also. So if there is an imbalance, central bank can sell out of that reserve. But selling out of that reserve is also called accommodating transaction. So if there is an imbalance between autonomous payment and autonomous receipts, there will be accommodating transaction. So the imbalance of autonomous payment and autonomous receipts itself is balance of payment disequilibrium. That means when I say that there is a disequilibrium in the balance of payment, there is deficit in balance of payment, then we can say that there is deficit in balance of payment because autonomous payments is more than the autonomous receipts. So that imbalance between autonomous transaction is basically gives an idea about the disequilibrium in the balance of payment. So this much of information you should be knowing related to the balance of payment, that it is a systematic record and it records all economic transactions between a resident of a country with residents of rest of world during an accounting period. And broadly it has two accounts, current account and capital account. Current account includes export and import of goods, services, transfer payment and investment income. Rest included in the capital account. The deficit can be interpreted in two ways. One, imbalance between autonomous payment and autonomous receipts. Other, if central bank reserve is changing, that change in reserve is also indicator of balance of payment deficit or surplus. If reserve is rising, surplus; reserve is declining, it is deficit. Clear? So just write down few basic things that should be in your notebook, so that when you revise it, you can recall those points. So I write down first. Yeah, but these informations are there in when you are reading it from Salvatore initially in that basic initial chapter related to balance of payment. These informations are there, but the relevant one I have just filtered and you have to just write it down. Balance of payment is, let's write down the meaning of BOP first. Balance of payment is a systematic record of all economic transactions done by residents of a country with rest of world during an accounting period. Just underline that. Next paragraph. There are two main account in BOP. First, current account, and second, capital account. Current account records trade in goods and services, as well as transfer payment and investment income. So the transactions recorded in current account are flow in nature. Next paragraph. Flow bhi hoga, and that will be basically recurring as well. Next paragraph. On the other hand, capital account records sale and purchase of assets like bond, land, etc. Sale and purchase of assets, underline that. Sale and purchase of assets like land, bond, etc. For some external balance is attained when current account balance plus capital account balance, that is sum of these two, current account balance plus capital account balance is equal to 0. Next paragraph. Balance of payment is always balanced in accounting sense. Underline that, in accounting sense. This is because it is based on accounting principle of double entry bookkeeping system. However, in economic sense, there will be disequilibrium in BOP. There will be disequilibrium in balance of payment in the form of deficit or surplus. Next paragraph. There will be deficit in BOP when autonomous payments, underline the word autonomous payments exceed autonomous receipts. Now explain what do you mean by autonomous. Autonomous transactions are those transactions which are independent from BOP consideration, balance of payment consideration. Underline that meaning. For example, an exporter or importer decision to buy or sell any good, to buy or sell any good is independent from BOP consideration, independent from BOP consideration, full stop. On the other hand, accommodating transactions are those which are guided by BOP consideration, which are guided by BOP consideration, which are guided by BOP consideration. For example, external borrowing by central bank, external borrowing by central bank to bridge the imbalance between autonomous payment and autonomous receipts, autonomous payment or autonomous receipts. That is why it is said that BOP deficit or surplus, BOP deficit or surplus is determined only by autonomous transaction, is determined only by autonomous transaction. Underline that line. Is determined only by autonomous transaction, because it is only autonomous receipt and payment that determine whether there is deficit or surplus. Next paragraph, just mention this part. BOP deficit or surplus can also be interpreted. BOP deficit or surplus can also be interpreted in terms of change in foreign exchange reserve, change in foreign exchange reserve, change in foreign exchange reserve with central bank, In the case of BOP deficit, foreign exchange reserve held by central bank, will decrease. Foreign exchange reserve held by central bank will decrease. And in the case of surplus, foreign exchange reserve held by central bank will increase. Foreign exchange reserve held by central bank will increase. Clear? So this much information you should be knowing related to the meaning of balance of payment. Now, since we are discussing the open economy and any transaction in this balance of payment will be involving foreign exchange, so an important question is at what rate it will be converted into domestic currency. So what is the meaning of exchange rate, and then we can discuss what is the meaning of fixed exchange rate, what is problem related in fixed exchange rate, what is flexible exchange rate. So now explain exchange rate. Remember, it is the rate at which domestic currency will be converted into foreign currency or vice versa. So when I write exchange rate, it is always expressed as how many unit of domestic currency per unit of foreign currency. Remember, how many unit of domestic currency per unit of foreign currency. So when you say that the exchange rate is 75 rupees per dollar, so it is rupees 75 for every $1. This is the rate of exchange. So when you read Salvatore The domestic currency there is a dollar, and if they are taking foreign currency as a euro, then how in US exchange rate will be explained with respect to euro? How many dollar per euro? Clear? How many dollar per euro? So whenever you explain exchange rate for any particular country, so since it will be easy for us to interpret by referring India as home country, so it is how many unit of domestic currency, that is how many unit of rupees for every 1 unit of foreign currency, that is dollar. So exchange rate is basically expressed in this form. Now this exchange rate, if this exchange rate increases, if I say exchange rate is increasing means for every dollar now you have to pay, let us say 80, it means rupee has depreciated. So exchange rate increase means depreciation, and exchange rate reduction means currency has appreciated. So interpretation, that means increase will be interpreted as depreciation, decrease as appreciation. But you can use appreciation or depreciation word when exchange rate is flexible. So if under flexible exchange rate system, that is determined by the market force, if exchange rate increases, then you call it depreciation of currency, and if it reduces, appreciation of currency. But if same thing happens under fixed exchange rate model, if same thing happens, that is exchange rate being increased under fixed exchange rate, but question is, if it is fixed, who will increase it? If it is fixed, it can be increased only by the central bank. So if central bank increases exchange rate, that means exchange rate has been increased by official action, not by the market forces. So in that case, it will be called devaluation of currency. So use that word carefully. Although sometimes you can interchange it, but technically correct answer will be that under fixed exchange rate model you use the word devaluation, and under flexible exchange rate model you use depreciation. So depreciation and appreciation will be under flexible, and devaluation and revaluation will be under fixed exchange rate. So obvious question is now, what is the meaning of fixed exchange rate? Who will keep it fixed? What is the difficulty in keeping exchange rate constant? And in that context we will be discussing the flexible. So first understand what is fixed, how it works, what is flexible, and how it works. So flexible is market forces, but you have to basically understand how fixed exchange rate works. So if I say that exchange rate is fixed, that means central bank is keeping it fixed. So it is the obligation of central bank to maintain exchange rate constant. So if exchange rate is constant, and it is constant at, let us say, 70 per dollar, then in order to keep exchange rate constant at 70 per dollar, if central bank has kept it fixed, it means central bank has made a commitment that anyone who will come to central bank with $1, central bank in exchange will give 70 rupees, or anyone who will come to central bank with 70 rupees, central bank will convert it into $1. Now what is the problem with this fixed exchange rate model is that, suppose on a particular date, say today 26th or 27th of August 2021, the central bank has a foreign exchange reserve of $1,000, फॉर एग्जाम्पल सपोज फॉरेन एक्सचेंज का रिजर्व आज की डेट में अराउंड $1,000 का है. If over a period of time the autonomous payments are more and autonomous receipts are less, that means demand for dollar is more and supply of dollar is less, that means I am talking about deficit condition. So in the deficit condition, what happens that the receipts are less and payments more. For payment is basically demand for foreign currency, and receipt is basically supply of foreign currency. So if payment is more and the receipt is less, who is filling this gap? this gap will be filled by the central bank. And how central bank will fill that gap? Central bank will fill that gap by selling out of its reserve. So if there is a shortfall, if more demand and less supply of foreign currency, if it is determined by the market forces, then automatically exchange rate will change. But central bank is maintaining it constant. So central bank is obliged to intervene in the market. So if that gap will be filled by the central bank, then certainly reserve available with central bank will decline. Suppose subsequent month also the gap persists, then in the subsequent month also central bank will have to intervene, then reserve will fall further. So if the question is, if this reserve get exhausted, then what will happen? Or if this reserve is getting to be exhausted, then can central bank maintain exchange rate constant? The answer is no. So what happens that when central bank see that its foreign exchange reserve is continuously declining, that means in future central bank will be unable to intervene in the market, then central bank increases exchange rate. That means then central bank will say that, okay, since I have less dollar, so to get $1 now you have to pay more rupees, that means make dollar more expensive, and that is called devaluation. So central bank will increase the exchange rate from 70 and now it is keeping it fixed at 80 per dollar. So central bank has increased that fixed exchange rate from 70 to 80. If exchange rate increases by that official action, then it is called devaluation of currency. So the problem with fixed exchange rate model is that if a country is facing continuous deficit in balance of payment, then central bank will have to devalue the currency again and again. Central bank will have to devalue the currency again and again. That problem does not exist under flexible, because if the system is flexible, so on any particular day if the demand for dollar is more and supply of dollar is less, then dollar will automatically appreciate and rupee will depreciate. And what happens regularly? So when you see in newspaper that rupee appreciate or depreciates any particular day, because on that day demand for dollar was less, demand for dollar was more and supply of dollar was less. So that problem is not arising in flexible. In the flexible exchange rate model, this problem is self-correcting in nature. It is self-correcting in nature, but in the fixed exchange rate, it is not self-correcting in nature. So first explain the meaning of exchange rate, then explain the fixed exchange rate part, and then explain the flexible exchange rate part. Flexible is also called as a floating exchange rate system. First define the meaning of exchange rate. Exchange rate is the rate at which domestic currency is converted into foreign currency. Domestic currency is converted into foreign currency and vice versa. So exchange rate can be fixed or it can be flexible. It can be fixed or it can be flexible. Our next paragraph is for fixed exchange rate. Under this system, that is fixed exchange rate, under this system, central bank intervenes in foreign exchange market. Central bank intervenes in foreign exchange market to keep exchange rate constant. To keep exchange rate constant. Remember, if central bank will not intervene, then the exchange rate cannot be maintained constant. Full stop. It works like support price system. It works like support price system. Like agriculture support price. You buy all the surplus at that support price. If you don't buy all the surplus at support price, the market price will fall. It works like support price system in which central bank makes a commitment. Central bank makes a commitment to buy and sell foreign currency. To buy and sell foreign currency at a fixed rate. At a fixed rate. However, in this system, central bank must have foreign exchange reserve available, in order to keep exchange rate fixed. So central bank can keep exchange rate constant so long as central bank has the reserve, so long as central bank can intervene in the market. But when a country has continuous deficit, in balance of payment, then central bank will eventually run out of reserve. And it will be unable to intervene in foreign exchange market. It will be unable to intervene in foreign exchange market. So in that case, central bank is forced to devalue the currency. Therefore, devaluation of currency occurs in fixed exchange rate system. In which central bank increases rate of exchange. Clear? So next paragraph is for flexible exchange rate. Next paragraph. Under this system, central bank allow exchange rate to adjust to equate supply and demand for foreign currency. Full stop. In this system of clean floating, central bank allow exchange rate to be freely determined in foreign exchange market. So, but in practice, exchange rate system is dirty floating. Or managed floating. Where central bank intervenes in market in an attempt to influence exchange rate. So it is not that when I say that it is flexible and it is determined by the market forces, then central bank is leaving it completely to be determined by the market forces. So if there is a wild fluctuation in the exchange rate, then to keep that fluctuation less, central bank intervenes in the market. So if there is excess demand for dollar, If central bank will not intervene, dollar will appreciate much, rupee will depreciate much. But to keep that depreciation limited, central bank intervenes in the market by selling dollar out of its reserve. So system is not completely clean floating in any country, because central bank of any country intervenes in the market in the case of very huge fluctuation in the exchange rate. So it is basically called managed floating. So central bank is allowing or managing it. So for example, say generally they have some band that if it will fluctuate between plus minus 5% or 10%, then it will not intervene. But the moment it will cross that band, central bank will intervene in the market. But for theoretical point of view, when we will be discussing any question, when I say clean floating or flexible exchange rate, it means it is completely flexible. We are not, central bank is not intervening, but in reality central bank intervenes in the market. Another basic thing in the balance of payment and foreign exchange rate is when we talk about exchange rate, there are two terms. One is the nominal exchange rate, other is the real exchange rate. So when I said it is 70 rupees per dollar or 75 rupees per dollar, is it real or is it nominal? So the exchange rate that we see every day is basically the nominal exchange rate, and there is a difference between nominal and real, and you know the basic difference between nominal and real. We have explained it in the macro section also in classical model. Nominal will be in monetary term and real will be in physical term. That means when we talk about in terms of purchasing power, how much goods you can buy with 70 rupees, that will be real. How much goods you can buy with that $1, that will be real. But when you explain it in terms of money, 75 rupees, $1, that will be the nominal. So what is a real exchange rate? Remember that a real exchange rate is basically nominal exchange rate into price ratio, price in foreign country upon domestic price. Foreign you can denote by star also, P star by P also you can write. So this R is real exchange rate, this E is nominal exchange rate, this PF is foreign country price, and this is a domestic country. We are talking about price means it is price of a basket of good that we are referring. So just consider this example. This example will make things more clear. Suppose I take a basket of good in India, and to purchase that basket in India it requires 70 rupees. Consider same basket, goods must be same, but in US same basket can be purchased in $1. So now we can say that purchasing power of 70 rupees in India is at parity with purchasing power of $1 in US. So based upon that purchasing power parity, exchange rate will be 70 rupees every dollar. So this exchange rate is rupees 70 for every dollar. Clear? Now if take another case, consider same basket, but now consider that in India there is a 10% inflation. So if there is a 10% inflation, it means the same basket will now cost in India 77 rupees. For the sake of simplicity, consider that there is no inflation in US, which means still you can buy the same basket in $1. So now purchasing power of 77 rupees is equivalent to purchasing power of $1. So exchange rate is rupees 77 for every dollar. You can note one thing here. The exchange rate increases by 10% when domestic price rise by 10%. That means exchange rate increase by 10% when domestic price rise by 10%. So when denominator and numerator both will rise by 10%, the real will remain unchanged. The real will remain unchanged. So if there is a high inflation in India, then exchange rate will increase, and increase means it will depreciate. Consider a third case, and in that third case, suppose again the same basket. In India, inflation rate is 10%, so it is 77. Now consider in US also 10% inflation. So 10% means now it will cost $1.1. So 75 rupees is equivalent to $1.1. So how many rupees equivalent to $1? 75 rupees equivalent to $1.1. So how many rupees equivalent to $1? The rate will remain same, that is 70 per dollar. It is 77 for $1.1. So 70 rupees for every dollar, which means now in this third case, domestic price and foreign price, these two numbers, both increases by 10%. In that case, exchange rate will not change because ratio is unchanged. This P and PF both will rise by 10%. That means if in both country we have 10% inflation, then the relative value will not change. The nominal will not change. So when this nominal will change? This nominal will change only when domestic inflation and foreign inflation are not equal. So in the first case, this one, we can say that in India there was 10% inflation, in US there was zero inflation because price was constant. So how much is the gap of inflation? 10%. So due to that 10%, exchange rate increases by 10%. Suppose in India 10% inflation, in US 3% inflation. So how much will be the gap? 7%. So by that 7%, this nominal exchange rate will adjust. So this nominal will adjust always to keep the real constant. So real exchange rate will basically determine, based upon real exchange rate we take decision whether to buy a good or whether not to buy a good. It is the purchasing power that decides. The nominal is not. So in economics, what is more relevant is the real, and less important will be the nominal. But at least the meaning part, you should be clear about the real and nominal, and just keep this equation in mind, that real exchange rate is equal to nominal exchange rate into foreign price upon domestic price. Clear? Write it down. Real exchange rate is a ratio of foreign price and domestic price, measured in same currency. A ratio of foreign price and domestic price measured in same currency. Full stop. It measures countries' competitiveness. In international trade. Countries' competitiveness in international trade. It also measures relative purchasing power. Of two currencies. Full stop. Two currencies are at purchasing power parity. When a unit of domestic currency can purchase same basket of good in home country or abroad. And just write down this equation for real exchange rate. So this thing we will be using in a various topic, and remember we talked about two exchange rate system. One is fixed, other is flexible. So under fixed, central bank will keep this E constant despite the fact that P will change. So central bank will be forced to change the exchange rate, because if there is a continuous inflation, there will be pressure on currency. तो अभी तक आपको सिर्फ वो बेसिक कंसेप्ट से फेमिलियर होना है. दैट मीन्स व्हाट इज एक्सचेंज रेट, व्हाट इज फिक्स एक्सचेंज रेट, व्हाट इज रियल एक्सचेंज रेट, व्हाट इज फ्लेक्सिबल एक्सचेंज रेट, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ करंट अकाउंट, व्हाट इज कैपिटल अकाउंट, व्हाट इज बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट. Now the other topic, by using that you can answer, I think, this question of 2020, this question number 4. So for that purpose, this question talks about the value of multiplier due to this government campaign of buy local, local is best. What effect might this have on the economy's multiplier? Now this type of question you can answer when you know trade of goods. Make this ready. Trade of goods. Remember in macro section also, when we said that income is determined by spending. In the first class of macro, you can recall, I have explained this part. Income is always determined by the spending. That is why it's called IS curve. I for income, S for spending. Income is determined by the spending. But which spending? Is it spending on domestic good, or is it spending by domestic resident? I repeat, is it spending on domestic good, or is it spending by domestic resident? So since we are referring to the domestic income, so it is spending on domestic good, spending on domestic good. But who will be spending on our domestic good? Household, firm, government, foreigners. But household may be spending on domestic good, may be buying foreign goods also, because economy is open. So when we write it here, it is consumption spending by household, that is domestic consumption spending by household, investment, government spending, and foreigners are buying our good, which means export. In rough you can just note it. Consumption spending by household include purchase of domestic good plus purchase of foreign goods. It is purchase of domestic plus purchase of foreign both. So in place of that CD you can write C minus CF. For ID you can write I minus IF. For GD you can write G minus GF plus export. So now you write C plus I plus G plus X minus CF minus IF minus GF, and when you club all, this component becomes import. So it is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Clear? This X minus M is a net export. And what is the C plus I plus G? C plus I plus G is spending by domestic resident, because domestic resident include household, farm and government. So spending by domestic resident you can call it A. So Y is equal to A plus NX. Y equal to A plus NX. If we are discussing about the closed economy, then you have to simply ignore that NX. Spending by domestic resident in that case will be only on the domestic goods, so there is no point of discussing that. Only in the open economy this question becomes relevant, that is spending by domestic resident and spending on domestic good are two different things. A plus NX, so this A is spending by domestic resident and A plus NX is spending on domestic good. Now A includes C plus I plus G. Remember, the consumption depends upon income and investment depend upon rate of interest, if we consider government expenditure as autonomous only. So what you are writing in bracket is a factor which determine A. So factor determining A include income and rate of interest. And what factor determine net export? Net export means it include export and import both. So it depend upon domestic income It will also depend upon foreign countries' income, because if there is more income in the foreign country, they will buy more from us. So our export depends upon their income, and our import depends upon their income. Our export basically determined by income in the foreign country, and the import is determined by income of our economy. And net export also depend upon the real exchange rate, because exchange rate will be playing an important role. Which commodity to buy, how much to buy, that will be determined by the exchange rate. So now in the open economy, this will become your IS curve, income equal to spending. So y equal to A, which is a function of y and I, net export, which is a function of y, yf, and in place of that r, you can write nominal exchange rate into foreign price upon domestic price. So this part you are adding in the international economics section. We have already done IS curve, but it was only for, we can say, closed economy. Now since it is an open economy, we have to add that part. So how the IS curve get modified? How that IS curve get modified? If you draw the IS curve for an open economy, remember, if you just recall from the derivation of IS curve, if you have any difficulty in this lecture, you can refer to the first class of Keynesian model in macro. This was line drawn at 45-degree angle, and this was the autonomous component A bar minus Bi. Starting from that, this was income based upon a specific rate of interest. Now if rate of interest decreases, when we derive IS curve, we reduce the interest rate. If rate of interest reduces, then this investment spending will increase and this line shifts up. As a result, income will increase from y1 to y2, and you connect that with this. Now if we are referring to an open economy, suppose if it is closed economy, then you can explain this part. When rate of interest reduces, investment spending increases and therefore income increases. But if it is an open economy, what will happen? That when rate of interest will reduce, investment will increase, income will increase. As your income will increase, a part of your increase in income will be used to buy foreign goods, because now economy is open. Earlier every part was spent on domestic good. Now one part will be spent on the foreign good. But if one part has been spent on the foreign good, then it will increase income of the foreign country. Therefore the income increase impact for the domestic economy will be less. So if it is closed economy, then income will rise by this. You can draw this part. But if it is an open economy, then there will be increase in income, but that increase in income will be less. So the first point and this point you can connect, so the line will be steeper. So this will be IS curve for open economy, and this will be IS2 for closed economy. That means for an open economy, IS curve becomes steeper, means its slope will increase. Now since it is referring to the slope, so you can recall from that macro class what is slope of IS curve. So slope of IS curve, if you can recall, it is minus 1 upon alpha g into b, where alpha g was multiplier and multiplier was 1 upon 1 minus c plus ct, and when you write this as a multiplier, this refers to closed economy. But what happens in the open economy? In the open economy, multiplier becomes 1 upon 1 minus c plus ct plus m, marginal propensity to import. So you are adding some value in the denominator, which means the value of multiplier will get reduced. This is for open economy. So in an open economy, multiplier is less. But if multiplier is less, then the slope will be more, because slope varies inversely with multiplier. If slope is more, then IS curve will be steeper. So the technical reason why IS curve is steeper in an open economy. IS curve is steeper in an open economy because value of multiplier is less in an open economy. And remember, every here the distinguishing factor is this marginal propensity to import. Marginal propensity to import, MPM, which is change in income due to change in import due to change in income. So if I say that the value of marginal propensity to import is 0.2, it means every 100 increase in income will cause increase in import by 20. So if you consider this marginal propensity to import as a 0.2, it means for every 100 rupees increase in income, import will rise by 20. Now given that, I read this question of 2020. Question number 4. It is there in your topic wise question of international economics, including the previous year question of 2020. In an economy, the government is trying to boost the local economy by a massive advertisement, buy local, local is best. Assuming that the public tend to be persuaded by the campaign, what effect might this have on the economy's multiplier? So what effect it will have on the economy's multiplier? Buy local, local is best, which means what? When income will rise, use less part of increase in income to buy foreign goods. So through this campaign, the value of that marginal propensity to import, will reduce. Clear? Value of marginal propensity to import will reduce. But when the value of marginal propensity to import will reduce, what is the effect on multiplier? Value of marginal propensity to import will get reduced. So when the value of marginal propensity to import, suppose it is 0.2, so based upon 0.2 you get a value of multiplier. So if get reduced from 0.2 to 0.1, so if the denominator get reduced, the entire value will increase, multiplier will increase, and there will be a greater impact on the domestic income, because multiplier determines the impact on income. When investment will rise by, let us say, 100, how much will be the change in income? That depends upon the multiplier. More will be the multiplier, more will be the change in income. Less will be multiplier, less will be the change in income. So through that campaign of buy local, local is best, if government has successfully persuaded people to buy locally, then the value of marginal propensity to import will reduce, the value of multiplier will increase, and the slope of IS curve will reduce, which means the IS curve will get flatter, and there will be more change in income. So if you know, now remember, in this question what they are trying to examine is your understanding of the open economy, your understanding about the multiplier concept, your understanding about the IS curve, and above all your ability to apply the concept. So if you are able to apply the concept, then you can answer this question. Clear? So it is not a difficult question. For if you know the basic things, what is IS curve, what is the slope of IS curve, what is the multiplier, how the slope of IS depends upon multiplier, then you can relate. Clear? So add into this. Explain this part now. In an open economy, part of domestic output is sold to foreigners. Part of domestic output is sold to foreigners, and part of spending by domestic resident is on foreign produced good. full stop. As a result, we have to modify IS curve equation. We have to modify IS curve equation. The most important change is that domestic spending no longer determines domestic output. Domestic spending no longer determines domestic output. In fact, spending on domestic good determines domestic output. Next paragraph. Let me see, you are basically writing this part. Spending on domestic good is sum of spending by domestic resident, that is A, and net export. Spending by domestic resident and net export. For substance, spending by domestic resident depends on domestic income and rate of interest. And net export depends on domestic income, foreign income, and real exchange rate. Therefore, IS equation can be written as, write down the last equation. IS equation can be written as y equal to A within bracket y comma I plus nx y comma yf comma real exchange rate. In an open economy, next paragraph, in an open economy, slope of IS curve will be more. Which means it will be steeper. Slope of IS curve will be more, which means it will be steeper. This is because slope of IS curve varies inversely with value of multiplier. Just write this equation. Slope of I is equal to minus 1 upon alpha g into b, where alpha g is this value in closed economy and alpha g is this value in an open economy. Below that, in an open economy, value of multiplier is less. Because a part of income is used to buy foreign produced goods. Which is reflected in marginal propensity to import. This is a small m value. Marginal propensity to import. And there in a note you can previous year question of 2020. Just add one paragraph there for this question. in an economy, just answer that, in an economy where government try to boost local economy, when government try to boost local economy by a massive advertisement, by a massive advertisement, buy local, local is best, buy local, local is best, and public tend to be persuaded by that campaign, public tend to be persuaded by that campaign, then in that case, then in that case value of, then in that case value of marginal propensity to import, marginal propensity to import will reduce, marginal propensity to import will reduce. As a result, the value of multiplier will increase. As a result, the value of multiplier will increase. Value of multiplier will increase. So underline that. That is the answer basically requires that part. Value of multiplier will increase. So consequently, slope of IS curve will reduce. Slope of IS curve will reduce, and it will get flatter. It will get flatter. It will get flatter. So it means now there will be more change in income. It means now there will be more change in income. There will be more change in income when a rate of interest will fall. More change in income when rate of interest will fall. So now to elaborate on that, you can use ISLM intersection, draw two different IS curve, one steeper, other flatter, then use monetary policy. If you use a monetary expansion, the rate of interest will fall, but fall in that rate of interest will increase more income or less income. That depends upon whether IS curve is steeper or flatter. So with this campaign, IS curve becomes flatter and there will be more change in income. So policy will become more effective. So there is a second part of it, but we will come to that when we will be discussing the topic. That means once you know the concept, so in the you can answer this first section based upon this class. So you have to just apply that part. Clear? The other thing that is important in this topic is we have modified the IS curve equation to write it as y equal to a plus nx, which is a function of y, yf e pf upon p. When you draw IS curve, remember we take only two variables, y and I, keeping all other factors constant. So what are the other factors here? Other factors include price, foreign price, exchange rate, foreign country income. So when you draw an IS curve, there will be movement along the IS curve when there is change in rate of interest. So if interest rate changes from I1 to I2, there is movement along the line. You move along the line. So what happens when other factors will change? Just remember that. What happens when other factors will change? So other factors include what? YF. So when foreign country income will increase, what is the impact? If income in the foreign country will increase, they will buy more from us. So our export will rise. So our net export will increase. As our net export will increase, this IS curve will shift rightward. This IS curve will shift rightward. Clear? So as a foreign country income will increase, this IS curve will shift rightward. It means when you draw a curve, it is based upon a given foreign country income. Similarly, if domestic price rises, then Just think logically, what is the impact on net export? When domestic price rises, domestic goods becomes expensive. So there will be less demand for domestic good, more demand for foreign good, which means net export will fall. When net export will fall, then IS curve will shift to the left in this way. When foreign country price rises, then when foreign country price rises, in that condition, demand for foreign goods will fall, demand for domestic goods will increase, so net export will increase, and IS curve will be right side. Just remember that when price will change, whether it is domestic price or foreign price, the IS curve will shift, and we will be using this concept later on when we will be discussing exchange rate overshooting, and there are many topics in this second section of international economics. Clear? So what is important in this equation is that this domestic income is a function of foreign income also. That means income in India depends upon the income in foreign countries. In that way, we are talking about interlinkages. So there is a greater interlinkage in an open economy. In a closed economy, the linkage was not there between two countries, but in an open economy, any change in one country will have some spillover effect and feedback effect for the first country, which is known as the repercussion effect. So there will be a repercussion effect because of the international linkages. So a repercussion effect plus capital account mobility. Remember, so far what we are discussing is basically this net export, and at the start we discussed that balance of payment has two account, current and capital. So this net export is basically repainting that current account. Once we will add the capital account, then we can conclude about the balance of payment part. Clear? So this was just your first class of international economics in this second section, talking about the basic part of BOP and the foreign exchange market. Now in the subsequent class, from question point of view, the first topic will be the Mundell-Fink model. That means we have completed this basic part. Now what is the repercussion effect, what is Mundell-Fink model, when monetary policy will be effective, when fiscal policy will be effective, under fixed exchange rate what happens, under flexible exchange rate what happens. So those things will be discussed in the second class of international economics in this section. Clear? So just revise this basic concept. The purpose is that in later chapters you should not be confusing yourself that what is the meaning of balance of payment, the basic one. You must know when you write real exchange rate, what is the meaning of real exchange rate, what is the meaning of appreciation, what is depreciation, and above all you require application of the concept. Just stated in 2020 that question was required, basically that application. So you have to apply that concept as well. Clear? So we'll continue with this in the subsequent class. Thank you.